Now that we have both of these buttons set up, we are going to match all these wires together. So orange to orange, striped orange to striped orange, so on and so forth. All of the wires from each button that you do will be run together with the same colors. So I have connected all of the same color wires together, solid blue to solid blue, striped blue to striped blue, striped brown to striped brown, solid brown to solid brown, so on and so forth. If you have more floors, they will all be connected the same way, and on this end you just maintain your same color code that you wrote down, and you should not have a problem. So now for the main thing that we need to connect, the red wires from all of the buttons will all need to be connected to the 12 volts. This green terminal here has ground and 12 volts on it. I'm going to disconnect the controller while I screw anything new into it. But this on the board it says 12 volts positive. You'll need the blue, the solid blue, and the solid orange. All will need to connect on that 12 volt terminal. So I'm going to connect the solid blues and the solid oranges together. And just for simplicity's sake, I'm going to make a jumper wire for it, just to make it easier to stretch it out in the box here. You'll see in a minute why that would be necessary. I'm just going to use a random wire. I'm going to connect these together and solder them all together. And the first connection that I'm going to make sure I get right is that 12 volts. Because if you put 12 volts on any of these other wires, you can fry the board. So please be 100% sure that the only wires you have connected to this 12 volts is the one for the LEDs on the buttons, which will be whatever wire is connected to the solid red wire on each harness. In this case, I used the orange wire, the solid orange on the network cable for the bottom floor button, and I used the solid blue on the network cable for the top floor buttons. I am going to use liquid tape. I have a liquid electrical tape that I picked up from Harbor Freight. I'm sure they have it available at other stores too, but this stuff works great. It was like $8. It's liquid electrical tape, and you just paint it on your connections, and it dries pretty quick. But this way, nothing's touching each other, and it's way easier than trying to wrap each one of these with tape. Alternatively, you can use crimp butt connectors, or you could use small wire nuts, but I found that those wire nuts tend to break the wire if you're not very careful, and this is way easier. I just covered all of those with a dab of this stuff, and I just let it dry, and I'll be good. And it dries with a thick enough coat. It looks like and feels like electrical tape once it dries. In case you're wondering how it looks or how it works. But again, you just let it dry. It doesn't take too long. Probably give it about a minute, and it'll be dry enough to the touch that it won't smear off. Now the last step that we need to do is connect the rest of the buttons to their respective terminals on the board here. Let me see if I can move these out of the way. Put that there. All of the button connections will be done on these two sets of terminal blocks. So we're going to start at the bottom, the down button. It's the second terminal down on the bottom right. For the down or the bottom floor, we use the solid green, and for the other side of the button we use the green with the white stripe. So we'll just put all the stripes on the left side and all the solids on the right side. But for the down button, I'm using the green, solid green, or the striped green. We'll go on this side for the down button. Now you will notice that there's a down LED and there's a down button. Make sure that you're using the right wire on the right terminal. The down button is the second one down on the bottom left block. For the LEDs, for the negative of the LEDs is the black wire. On our older setups, we were using 5-volt LED buttons, which is why we had the terminals for 5 volts, but with our newer systems we're using 12 volts buttons. That's why we added this 12 volt connection here, but just for backwards compatibility we left the 5-volt terminal for the LED. But you will not be using the LED terminal for the buttons. The only we are using the 5-volt positive only for these sensors, and instead of the LEDs, just so, and we will correct the labeling on our next iteration once we sell this stock here and we get our next order in. But for the negative, which is the black wire, we have the striped orange for the down button. So I'm going to get the striped orange, and I'm going to put that one for the down LED negative. Again, the only difference is that for the LEDs on the positive side, we're connecting them to the 12 volts instead of the 5-volt terminals up here. But all of the negatives are still getting used in the same location. The next set of terminals will be for the middle button, which we have not made a harness for yet, so we'll skip that for now. We'll go to the up button, and the button wires are the green and white on the harness, so we used solid brown and the striped brown. So we'll get the striped brown first, and that goes on the left side for the up button. And again, I apologize for the inconsistent labeling. This should say top instead of up. And the solid brown goes on the up button. And then for the LEDs, the positive is already connected to 12 volts. So the only one that should be left is your blue with the white stripe, and that is the up LED negative, and that's this one here. Now that is it for the buttons and the limit switches. It is a bit of a mess in here. You can feel free to clean yours up a little. I was kind of rushing through this, but you may want to leave a little more wire exposed just to make it easier for you to maneuver inside of the box. But once you're done, if you can, try to keep all the button wires together and all the sensor wire, the limit sensor wires separate. That way they don't interfere with each other with any signals or anything. At this point, we should be good to go with a test. Yes, I don't have the middle button set up, but again, you simply make another wire harness just like these. But since it's going to be on a separate wire, it'll, obviously you can keep those wires separate, but you could use the same color code. You can either use, green to green, white to green white, red to orange, black to white orange. It's just going to be on a separate wire specifically for the middle button setup. Again, the 12 volts will get connected with the 12 volts that all the other ones did too for the LED. But the button terminals and the negative terminals all get connected on these regular blocks up here. Let's go ahead and power it back up and see how it turns out. The buttons light up. They will give you codes based on any errors that it detects. It's in an emergency stop position because the elevator has activated the backup. So again, we're still on manual control, and I don't have this plugged in now. Plug the hoist back in. Now I can move that and our error should clear. It registers that it's on the top floor. So now, let me see, I'm not sure which one of these is which. This is the green wire, so this should be the one that goes down. If I press this, it says going down, and I think I'm going to glue these in a minute, but it's going down, and now we can simulate what this is going to be doing later. We'll just manually move it, and as soon as it reaches floor 1, this should stop, and it does. It says bottom floor, and again I can press the up button now, which is this one, and it says going up. I will replicate what the elevator would be doing, and again it stops, and you can see it registers ready to go again. So the buttons are working correctly. We've tested all the sensors, and we've got the emergency stop buttons installed and tested. Oh, and the display does turn off after there's no activity and there's no errors. If there is an error, it will activate immediately. Once everything's good and it does not detect any errors, it will just simply go dark, just for conservation of electricity.